Welcome back to History in Motion, proudly brought to you by Midas.
My first racing car was a 911 2.7 RS, the yellow one, which I love to bits. My biggest crash was with that car that I love to bits. Drove it to bits on Swartkops, turn 1. The scene was captured on camera and it made the title scene of the program. And it was a real big motivation as well. After I had the crash, the guy said, throw that Porsche away on TV, and I decided that's not what it's going to happen. Watch this space. And I rebuilt it, and it was even faster and better. My top speed, I remember, was about 195. I can't even remember the date and time. 195 is pretty fast, even in a slow car. I race against a lot of guys, and I have a lot of close races and good dices. I enjoy all racing and all dices. The guy that drove the longest against me was Stefan, with the green and orange Porsche behind me, and blue and green. And we used to race for years, and it was fantastic. He's a good driver, and he's consistent and very persistent. I would like to have a wing at the rear to get a little bit more down pressure on my tires, but I don't think it's permitted, otherwise you're converting it into something else. If I remember correctly, it was 24. The original ones was 4 prototypes which they built, which also set up world records. In 1967 it was a brilliant achievement, and then they built 20 more and they stopped. So a total of 24 of my 911Rs.
The SKF Pre-66 Legend production cars and the Little Giants prepare to take to the track on this fantastic Hitachi race day at Kyalami.
Great to be driving the Alfa once again. 1964 Giulia TI Super. Really great, and hopefully give the V8s a little bit of a, well, keep them honest at least.
Hopefully it's not the last time we're at Kyalami. Hopefully somebody will buy it and make us look after our home for us. We're looking for great days racing, huge fields, a lot of fun, and a lot of spills as well. We sorted the brakes out. We've had brake problems all year. We sorted them out. So we'll see what happens.
Taking pole position in the Pre-66 Legend production cars is Tom Falconer in his Mustang, closely followed by the Mustang of Ferdy van Niekerk Jr. Clive Densham is in third with his Alfa, and Jonathan Dutoy starts fourth in his Chevy Nova. Race winner at Swartkops, Frank Copping, will start in 12th place in the Renault Dauphine. The cars line up on the grid, and we get the thumbs up from Falconer, who is ready to race. The Alfa of Densham behind him, and an apprehensive way from Densham, who will have his hands full trying to keep the Chevy Nova behind him. The lights go out, and the twin Mustangs of Tom Falconer and Ferdy van Niekerk Jr. lead the field into turn 1. Behind them, Mark Dutoy and the Trans-Africa Racing Chevy Chevelle has made a great start from 6th to be challenging his brother in the Chevy Nova for 3rd place. Marco Taylor's Alfa GT Jr. holds his position ahead of John Simpson's number 5 Yellow GT Jr. The leaders power onto the back straight, past the old pits, and it is the Sunday Times Mustang with Tom Falconer at the wheel who maintains the advantage over the Trans-Africa Racing Mustang of Van Niekerk Jr. Van Niekerk is really keeping the pressure on Falconer, and the two cars are separated by less than a length as they round Clubhouse and then power down towards the S's. Patrick Gearing in his Alfa is doing his best to keep Franco Scribante's Mustang at bay as they exit the bowl. But Scribante is slowing. Something's wrong with his car. It turns out to be an electrical short which is causing the engine to misfire, and rather than risk damage to the engine, Scribante sensibly retires the car. Some of the many spectators at Kyalami today watched Scribante nurse his car back into the pits. Coming out of the mine shaft and into the bowl, and Jonathan du Toit is feeling the pressure from the alphas of Clive Densham and Trevor Tuck as they swamp his mirrors looking for a way past. Into turn 13, nose to tail, and Tuck looks down the right in his Farmer Shop 24 Giulia. Du Toit tows the alphas round the final bend and onto the start-finish straight. They may be smaller, but these alphas and their drivers are definitely determined, and they will not let go of the Chevy Nova in front of them, despite the battle developing between them. Coming up the back straight, and Larry Davies' Alfa Giulia leads Sean Cabrita in the Alfa TI through sunset. Behind the pair is Rob Gearing in his BMW 2000 and Terence Boytes in his Austin Cooper Mini. Through sunset and up into Clubhouse, and there's nothing between Davies and Cabrita. On board now with Marco Taylor in his Alfa Romeo GT Junior as he's lapped by race leader Tom Falconer in his Ford Mustang Fastback. The Mustang gallops past Gary Stacey's Ford Cortina ahead as well and powers on through to sunset. Coming out of the mine shaft and heading towards the bowl, and Falconer in his New Jersey-built Ford Mustang is racing past some of the slower cars on his way towards the finish line. Motoring journalist Falconer bought his car back in 2000, but only started racing it 4 years ago. Coming down to the final bend to complete lap 7 of 8, and a scary moment there for Falconer as the lower control arm on his Mustang has broken. This will severely affect the steering and handling of his car, and will most certainly spell out retirement for Falconer, who was having a dream drive, leading the field from the start. With less than a lap to go to the checkered flag, Falconer will be very disappointed. The lapped cars unlap themselves as Falconer nurses his car towards a safe area to park it up. Going past him now, the second-place Mustang of Ferdy van Niekerk Jr., who will now inherit the lead after Falconer's misfortune. Into Westbank, and van Niekerk's Mustang is on a mission as he laps Gary Stacey's Ford Cortina. Coming down the mine shaft, van Niekerk has lined up Larry Davies' Alfa Romeo Giulia. He makes his move heading up to turn 13, and Davies graciously lets the faster car past. Heading down the hill and into the final bend, and van Niekerk dives down the inside of Frank Copping in his Renault Dauphine and laps the field up to 12th position. The crowd on the pit wall cheer on the Mustang as he heads towards the checkered flag and takes victory. A great win for Ferdy van Niekerk Jr. in the Double F Racing number 14 Ford Mustang. Confirmation of the results, and Jonathan du Toit takes second place 7/10 of a second ahead of Trevor Tuck, who narrowly edged out Clive Densham by 0.13 of a second. Terence Boytes was the fastest of the Little Giant cars, coming home in 12th place in the Austin Cooper Mini.
Pretty frustrating. We had a great lead, and then lower control arm snapped. Thankfully at turn 8, because if it had happened 2 corners before, I would have gone straight into the inside wall at the bottom of the mine shaft, and it would have been an epic crash.
It was a fantastic dice. The Alphas were right with the V8s again this weekend, so it was great to see Clive and I had a real scrap. And Jono as well was making that big red thing of his as wide as it could be, but it was fantastic. We enjoyed it.
The 2 Alphas were hot on the heels of the Chev. We had a good, very, very good dice. We were taking turns, first myself, and then Trevor, and eventually Trevor put me to the line by about 0.1 of a second. So It was a very good race then.
I was able to blast past Clive off the start and then got my head down, but saw the Alphas coming, and so then I had to play a defensive game for the rest of the race. So it's great having horsepower and putting the big Chev in the middle of the road, and they couldn't do much.
The lights go out and race 2 is underway here at Kyalami. Jonathan du Toit in his Chevy Nova has made a great start and is narrowly ahead of Van Niekerk Jr.'s Mustang. Van Niekerk had the line going into turn 2 and has the lead over du Toit, and in a repeat of race 1, Trevor Tuck is filling the Nova's mirrors with Clive Densham hot on his heels. After his retirement in Heat 1, Franco Scribante started the second heat at the back of the grid, and the powerful number 25 Mustang will be flying through the field in an effort to make up for his short-lived first heat. Coming into Sunset, he has worked his way up from 20th on the grid to 5th place, on the tail of Clive Densham. Into Clubhouse, and Scribante's Mustang has found its way past the Alfa Giulia of Clive Densham and has Trevor Tuck in his sights. Into West Bank, and side by side Scribante and Tuck go through. Despite having the advantage of the inside line, Tuck can't keep the Mustang at bay, and heading down to the mine shaft, Scribante takes the position. The Farmer Shop 24 Alpha of Trevor Tuck has a comfortable margin over Clive Densham at the moment, with Mark du Toit in the Chevy Chevelle behind the pair. Mark has had a relatively quiet 2 races and is just keeping it tidy and out of trouble. Coming onto the start-finish straight, and Scribante is lining up Van Niekerk Jr. He makes his move to the left of the Mustang and has the inside line into turn 1 and takes the lead in Heat 2. Van Niekerk Jr. is not going to let Scribante romp away with a victory, and the 2 Mustangs battle it out, heading onto the back straight. Sean Cabrita and Larry Davies are inches apart again in a repeat of race 1 as they head up to turn 13. Rob Gearing is eager to get in on the action and is right behind the pair in his BMW 2000. Cabrita pulls ahead as Davies fights off Gearing, who is right on his back bumper. Gearing slips down the inside of Davies going into turn 14, and the pair are side by side. What's that? It looks like Rob Gearing's exhaust pipe has come away and slides to the side of the track out of harm's way. This could cost him a bit of power for the remainder of the race. With car parts going missing, Larry Davies has managed to keep his position ahead of Gearing. Into the bowl, and Mark Miller in his red Alfa Romeo Giulia leads Gino Alessio in his green Giulia Sport. Up the hill they go, and it's great to see such classic racing cars at Kyalami, especially as many of the drivers and spectators on the day were mindful of the uncertain future of Kyalami and were reminiscing about the heydays of this wonderful track and the great races that have been held here since it opened its gates in 1961. With both these Alphas being 1965 models, it's amazing to think that in 1965 an Alfa Giulia and Giulia Sprint were raced at the 9-hour here at Kyalami. Davies versus Gearing as they head round the bend and down the hill. Despite losing his exhaust, Rob Gearing is holding on to the back of Larry Davies and is desperate to keep him within his grasp. Frank Copping is heading into Sunset in his beautiful blue Renault Dauphine, which he bought back in 1999 and was built by Vaughan Wetton. Copping has currently got his hands full building a few new cars to bring racing, including a left-hand drive Renault Dauphine and an R8 Gordini. Franco Scribante in his orange and white Mustang rounds the final bend and storms down the start-finish straight to take a well-driven win. Ferdy Van Niekerk Jr. will have to settle for second place, 1.7 seconds behind Scribante. From the back of the grid to the front, a fantastic drive from Franco Scribante. Confirmation of the results then for the SKF Pre-66 Legend Production Cars and Little Giants. Jonathan du Toit came home in 3rd, with Clive Densham in 4th place. Gary Stacey in 9th took the Little Giants honours, with Terence Buerters half a second behind him in 2nd place.
I think I had the quicker car, Rob would acknowledge that, but I think Rob put me under pressure under Sunset and a couple of other corners, like the bottom of the bowl, and just kept me honest.
He's definitely got more Italian horsepower than we had the German BMW stuff today, but my car was definitely better on the brakes and I was a bit quicker through the fast stuff, so it makes production car racing, I think, very interesting because the cars have got different strengths and weaknesses. And my old chummy from school, yeah, we had a good go together.
Coming up next week on History in Motion, we have a look at the Formula One demo, the pre-66 sports and GT cars, a huge field of historic saloons, some frantic Formula Ford action, and a beautiful endurance race to end the day. Don't miss it! That's it for the first half of our coverage from round 4 of the Midas Historic Tour. See you next week for the rest of the action from Kyalami. History in Motion is proudly brought to you by Midas Sport and its associate sponsors.